Tonight, as toxic drugs hit a Manitoba town, one family mourns.
The situation has gotten to the place where we've seen too many lives lost.
Vuntut Gwitchin First Nation in the Yukon declares a state of emergency.
You're going to find from Ojibwe to Anishinaabe to Cree to Blackfoot.
And a new retail space opens in Winnipeg. Good evening, I'm Dennis Ward. Welcome to APTN National News. A Winnipeg family is grieving, saying their 31-year-old son suffered a catastrophic brain injury due to an overdose Saturday night in the Paw, a community in northern Manitoba. And he won't be coming home. APTN's Leanne Sanders reports.
We got the results from the MRI. They weren't good. My son suffered a catastrophic brain injury that there's no coming back from. My son is gone.
Joe Foray has been updating family and friends on Facebook since his son Harlan overdosed in the Paw Saturday night. In a post last night, Foray said Harlan was being brought back to Winnipeg to see if he could possibly be an organ donor.
We're taking that road because that was the spirit of Harlan. Harlan loved everybody. He loved giving of himself to help anybody at the drop of a hat. So in the spirit of his life, we thought that this would be the best thing, that he would continue to help others in his death.
RCMP continued to investigate the suspected tainted drug overdoses of Foray and 3 others at an establishment in the Paw on Saturday night. According to Foray, the other 3 were revived with Narcan. 2 more people overdosed later that evening at the same place. RCMP released photos of the drugs so people know what to watch out for.
The idea is to get that message across that if you do take it, be careful of what you have right now, because this is, like I say, we're most likely going to lose one of the individuals in this case, and it's unfortunate. We don't want to lose any more.
Harm reduction worker Krista Tooley is not surprised by the overdoses.
We have definitely seen toxic drugs in the community. It is not new to the community. We know that Canada has a toxic drug supply right now, so it's not new to anywhere in Canada. A lot of communities are experiencing the same poisonings.
Meanwhile, RCMP reported that a vigilant nurse in Thompson General Hospital turned over a small box containing 7 vials of an unknown crystal-like powder to them on Saturday night. While testing is ongoing, RCMP believe the drugs may be the same substance that was discovered in the Paw. RCMP say 1 person overdosed in Thompson. Their condition is not known. For Tooley and other harm reduction workers, the message is to use safely.
To start low, go slow, use with a friend, stagger your use, get your substance tested.
Leanne Sanders, APTN National News, Winnipeg.
To BC now, where an alarming report from the First Nations Health Authority found that Indigenous women have a higher chance of dying from toxic drugs. APTN's Tina House has that story.
With the toxic drug supply continuing to wreak havoc in BC, with a reported 11,000 people having lost their lives since the epidemic was declared 7 years ago, a new report by the First Nations Health Authority says that Indigenous people are losing their lives at an alarming rate. Dr. Nell Wyman is the acting Chief Medical Health Officer for the FNHA.
So last year, 2022, as we released, was the worst year ever for First Nations people in BC in terms of deaths. We had 373 deaths due to toxic drugs and many more toxic drug poisoning events.
And one of those families hit hard by the crisis is Audrey Segal. She lost her mother from a fentanyl overdose in 2017. And almost 2 years later to the day, her beloved older sister Maria also died of an accidental fentanyl overdose. She recalls the moment police showed up at her door on January the 29th, 2019.
I can't figure out what's going on, and he says, "Audrey, it's Maria." I said, "Okay." He said, "We've come to tell you she's gone." And I said, because often she would experience a lot of shame. And if she ended up in a bad place or in a bad way, she was reluctant to call me. But we'd done a lot of work, and I told her, wherever you are, you call me and I will always come and get you. I will always come and get you. And I said, well, where is she? Like, just tell me where she is. Tell her I'm on my way. I'll go right now. I'm on my way. Tell her I'm going to go get her. And they said, no, she's gone.
And it was at that moment that Audrey says her world completely shattered. Maria was not just her sister, but her best friend.
He told me where she was. He told me a certain time. He said that 3 teams of paramedics worked on her in rotation, and that they were devastated that they couldn't revive her, that it was instantaneous and she didn't suffer.
Research has shown that Indigenous women are 11 times more likely to die from toxic drugs than any other population. Dr. Wyman says they are currently establishing more treatment centers and community support for those on the front lines.
Do not use alone if at all possible. If you have to use alone, and you have a phone, try to use something like the Lifeguard app. Be aware of drug alerts that go out in your community. If you have access to drug checking or drug testing strips, for example, it would be good to use.
And as for Audrey, she says she still struggles with grief every day.
It's not the same. That I'm not the same. That I don't even think I think in my language we must have had a word for a feeling that's greater than a heartbreak, but we don't have a word like that in English.
Tina House, APTN National News, Vancouver.
Now, as the Yukon continues to grapple with an addictions crisis, the northernmost First Nation in the territory is the latest to declare a substance use emergency. Sarah Connors has more.
The Vuntut Gwitchin are the northernmost First Nation in the Yukon. Their community of Old Crow is the only fly-in community in the territory. But this isolation hasn't shielded them from the substance use crisis.
We are seriously dealing with a crisis in our community.
Chief Pauline Frost says around 5 Vuntut citizens have died in recent years from addictions, a hard hit to the community of just over 200 people.
You know, the situation has gotten to the place where we've seen too many lives lost.
That's why her First Nation passed an emergency declaration in response to the crisis last week. The Vuntut Gwitchin are the 3rd First Nation in the Yukon to pass a declaration since January 2022.
It means that every citizen in the community has an obligation to address the crises and to look at mitigating measures.
To help combat the crisis, the First Nation is providing resources like harm reduction counselors and outreach workers. Frost says after putting out a notice for treatment in March, over 30 citizens applied.
In itself, I think, is a significant win for our community.
The impacts of addiction continue to be felt in the territory. The Yukon's Coroner's Service is investigating 4 deaths that happened in a 3-day span earlier this month. Chief Coroner Heather Jones says while the deaths are unrelated, all 4 appear to be linked to substance use.
And it's important that we just get the word out for people to continue to be super careful with the drugs, continue to be toxic.
3 of the deceased were First Nations. Jones says she's noticing more Indigenous people dying due to substance use in recent years.
It's certainly the majority that we're seeing this year, and that's heartbreaking.
As for Frost, she's hoping for a future where her people are happy, healthy, and thriving.
We can overcome this by working together and working with our communities.
Sarah Connors, APTN National News, Whitehorse.
In Alberta, Premier Danielle Smith was in Enoch Cree Nation this week to announce $30 million in funding to build a new centre for addictions treatment. APTN's Danielle Parody was at the event and joins us now. Danielle, thanks for being with us. Can you tell us a bit about the announcement made yesterday?
Yes, Premier Danielle Smith and Chief Cody Thomas of Enoch Cree Nation announced that there will be a 75-bed treatment center that will serve up to 300 people a year, designed with culturally appropriate addiction recovery services. So that will service the Edmonton area.
And now there's been some controversy as to this involuntary treatment being explored in Alberta. Can you tell us about that?
Yes, although the center itself is not designed for involuntary treatment specifically, that's been a big issue as we prepare for an election in Alberta. Both Premier Smith and Chief Thomas spoke about the addiction issues that people in Alberta are facing and the resulting social disorder. Chief Cody Thomas said that the center is going to be a very important resource for the community, and he told reporters that he supported involuntary treatment in some cases. Here's a clip of him discussing.
We're seeing our members in psychosis, and the resilience that we have as leadership and our frontline staff with health. We tried the mobile crisis response, and we still are working towards that initiative, but when are we going to say enough's enough to just watch our people deteriorate and die in the streets? It's not an Edmonton or a Calgary or a province problem. It's we're all in this together, and we're all affected by individuals that are addicted. We form 10 them, they come out in 24 hours and they're back to the same thing. At least give them that glimmer of hope.
So Chief Thomas was talking about issues not only in his community, but things that we're seeing province-wide, and that he is hopeful that people will seek treatment themselves. They're going to prioritize treatment for wellness plans for people who are going through the Indigenous court system as well in Alberta, and he really hopes that this will help raise up the community.
So Danielle, any idea on when the Centre for Enoch Cree Nation will be operational?
We haven't been given a date for when it will be operational, but they do plan to begin construction in 2024. They were able to save some time using treatment designs based off of the Kenai blood tribe, based on the work that they did for the architecture, so that will help save some time. There are also 9 different centers being planned across the province, including the blood tribe and a couple in the northern and central region.
Well, Danielle, we'll leave it there, but I appreciate you telling us about this, what sounds like a pretty important operation there.
Thanks, Dennis.
Well, as you're hearing, communities right across this country are dealing with issues related to addictions and mental health. We'd like to hear if you're being impacted. Here's how you can get in touch. You can send your emails to news@aptn.ca or leave a comment on our website. That's aptnnews.ca. You can also find us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, and TikTok. Time to step aside for a quick break. Still to come, a new store opens to bring Indigenous wares to Winnipeg.
My favorite part of the store is probably going to be the sage.
Welcome back. The person tasked with helping the federal government fulfill one of the MMIWG inquiry calls to justice was before a Senate committee Tuesday morning. Former journalist Jennifer Moore-Rattray is now the special representative to Crown Indigenous Relations Minister Mark Miller. The appointment of an Indigenous and human rights ombudsperson is one of the calls to justice in the final report of the inquiry. Moore-Rattray told the Senate Committee on Indigenous Peoples about some of the feedback she has been receiving from communities in recent weeks, including the urgent need for a red dress alert system.
And they talked about a red dress alert. They talked about the critical importance of a red dress alert. That basically the systems and structures are all in place, the mechanics, the technology, all in place, ready to go, and just how important that is, but with families setting the parameters and deciding when a red dress alert is sent out.
After a fatal hit and run, Broken Head Ojibwe First Nation in Manitoba is demanding stronger safety measures to calm the busy highway running through their nation just north of Winnipeg. Hundreds of thousands of cars use Highway 59 to pass through the nation each year. 75-year-old Larry Hodge was struck from behind while walking to work on April 20th and was pronounced dead at the scene. As with many First Nations across the country, there are no public options for transportation. At a recent press conference, Broken Head Ojibwe Nation said that high speeds and low lighting puts people along the highway at risk. Chief Gordon Bluesky says they've been asking the province of Manitoba for infrastructure improvements for decades.
He was 75 years old. 75 years old. And he got hit walking to work. He was still working. He was still very active. He's a very kind person, someone that's been very active through our community throughout the decades that he's lived with us. And it's just unfortunate that we're in a situation now where we're talking about his sudden passing because of things that we feel should be made available to our community in the first place. Illumination, if they would have saw him, we could be talking about something different. If the speed was reduced, we could be talking about something different as well today.
Now, Manitoba's Transportation Minister Doyle Penuik said in an emailed response that his department has been working with the community and temporary speed reader signs were installed. Governor General Mary Simon is visiting the Northwest Territories this week. Her tour is billed as an opportunity to discuss the unique climate change issues facing northern communities. Simon touched down in the capital city of Yellowknife earlier today. The visit is an international affair. She'll be joined by Germany's President Frank-Walter Steinmeier tomorrow. The delegation is set to travel to the small Arctic community of Tuktoyaktuk, where they will meet Indigenous leaders to learn about the climate challenges they are facing. A young entrepreneur has opened a store full of Indigenous art and designs in Winnipeg. Sav Jones checked it out to see what they have to offer.
Moccasins, puppets, and work by Indigenous artists are some of the many things you can find at Iron Star Company in Winnipeg.
And of course, beadwork.
Yes.
Yes, for sure. We have to have beadwork.
27-year-old founder Amy Dare Ironstar created the store as an homage to her family from Carry the Kettle Nakota Nation in Saskatchewan.
My favorite part of the store is probably going to be the sage, because as an urban native, it is hard sometimes to go back home to go pick for medicines. So it's nice to have that, that ability to come to a store and get something.
She says that a lack of representation for Indigenous-made designs and products at other stores pushed her to create a one-stop shop of her own.
You're going to find from Ojibwe to Anishinaabe to Cree to Blackfoot, and I think that's what's really important, is to showcase the different artists, the different tribes, the representation of Canada.
Amongst the handmade items sourced from across the country, you'll find some of Dare Iron Star's own handiwork.
If you go around the store, I guess my personality kind of shines through in a way. It does tell a story about myself. So it's kind of nice that I can tie myself into the store, but also have other artists as well. So we can kind of showcase the different elements of it all.
Sav Jonesa, APTN National News, Winnipeg.
Great looking stuff there. Really like some of those ties. Coming up after the break, an Algonquin powerlifter wins gold. Welcome back. Time now for our photo of the day. Tom Baker shared this photo of a beautiful orange sunset reflecting off the water on the west coast of Vancouver Island. Thanks for that, Tom. If you have a great photo, you can send it to share@aptn.ca, and it might just be our next photo of the day. Now let's take a look at tomorrow's weather forecast. Starting on the east coast, 14 for Halifax, showers, and 15 in Fredericton. 12 in Kuujjuaq, cloudy, and 8 in Nain. 8 with showers in Montreal, snow, and +6 in Val-d'Or. +4 for Sault Ste. Marie, 8 for North Bay. 7 in Thunder Bay, 10 in Sioux Lookout. 8 for God's Lake, rain, and 6 for Norway House. 9 with showers in Winnipeg, 11 and rain in Dauphin. 12 with rain in Regina, sunny, and 13 for Saskatoon. 12 in Meadow Lake, snow, and 4 for La Ronge. In northern Alberta, 7 with snow in Fort Chip, snow, and 13 for Fort McMurray. 17 in Edmonton, 20 for Lethbridge. 14 with showers in Vancouver, 23 in Kamloops. 13 and rain for Prince George, rain, and 8 in Smithers. -4 with snow in Old Crow, +6 in Whitehorse. 3 with snow in Yellowknife, -3 for Norman Wells. -15 in Sax Harbor, 11 below for Pawlatuck. -7 with snow in Baker Lake, Cloudy and 5 below for Arviette. Minus 19 in Resolute. 6 below in Joe Haven. A delegation from Vakata Maori, formerly known as Maori Television, was in Winnipeg to visit APTN World Headquarters this week. The two Indigenous broadcasters signed a memorandum of understanding late last year to share content and knowledge. Tonight we sit down with CEO Shane Toruma on Face to Face.
Many of our stories went untold. Many of our stories were misrepresented, as I know is the case for many other Indigenous communities across the globe, which is why it's really important, especially when we think about the conversation we had last week at the UN, that Indigenous communities have the ability and opportunity to tell their own stories, but also make decisions about how they tell those stories. We know that our stories are best told by us.
Good news follow-up to a story about an Algonquin powerlifter from Ottawa who is competing for the first time. The 23-year-old member of Pikwakanagan First Nation lifted a total of 1,000 pounds and won gold. Zach Liberty took home gold at the Ontario Powerlifting Association's meet in Hamilton. He deadlifted 424 pounds and bench pressed 252 pounds. He also did a squat of 330 pounds. It took a decade of training, but his dedication in the gym has paid off. Congrats, Zach. Saw your mom was pretty proud too. That's all the time, all the news we could fit in tonight's newscast. For much more on More News Anytime, you can visit our website, aptnnews.ca. Be sure to join us tomorrow live at 3 p.m. Eastern. That's when we will be putting Indigenous comedy in focus. Now stick around. Face to Face is up next. We're sitting down with Vakata Maori CEO Shane Toruma. I'm Dennis Ward. Thanks for being with us. Have a great night.